So Microsoft Endpoint Manager, in a shorter form, it is called as MEM. So it's a combination of Intune mobile device management tool and SCCM, which is System Center Configuration Manager tool, which is an on-premises device management. And it's a Windows autopilot for auto provisioning of a Windows OS system and desktop analytics for analyzing the current workstation environment, whether it's compatible with Windows, the latest Windows OS or not. So all those products can be controlled from a centralized solution, which is Microsoft Endpoint Manager. So it's basically both. It's a cloud-based solution as well as on-premises based solution. So in simple term, we call it as hybrid model. You can either control a workstation in cloud-based Microsoft Endpoint Manager and keep your server in on-premises as per your organization standard requirement. So if you are using System Center Configuration Manager and if you are moving towards Intune management, so it is always good to work on Microsoft Endpoint Manager. So recently there are multiple changes made by Microsoft that no more standalone Intune environment will be available. So all solutions like SCCM, Intune, Desktop Analytics, and Windows Autopilot, even Endpoint Security, are moved to Microsoft Endpoint Manager as a package. So if you have a license for SCCM, you're entitled to install Intune as well. So what is Intune? Intune is a cloud-based solution that is provided as part of Azure. So this service can provide two solutions. One is mobile device management and another is mobile application management. In the next slide, we will see what is the difference between this. And this can be integrated with Azure and Microsoft 365 service. So if you want to access Intune, either you can do it from the Azure level or from the Microsoft 365 service level. Basically, it is used as a client management tool from the cloud level. Like System Center Configuration Manager, it does a compliance check, a deployment, and it collects the inventory. Those kind of services can be performed from the Intune level. Except the servers, Intune can collect all the informations of the workstation reporting to. So apart from this inventory collection and device management, it can protects the corporate data without affecting the personal data. So there are some options like app protection policy, app configuration policy, and device configuration policies. Those services are available under Intune. So, what is the main advantage of using the Intune instead of an on-premises infrastructure? Is there is no separate infrastructure. The only thing is required is you need a proper license subscription from Azure. That's it. So, what is mobile device management and mobile application management? In a very simple term, whichever device that is getting enrolled as part of Intune. As part of Intune, you install a company portal for enrolling into Intune. So those devices are mobile device management. Some users they don't want to configure their personal device into Intune for administration. So those unenrolled devices can be managed still from Intune through mobile application management. So MDM is complete solution. So end to end, whatever the service that is being given under Intune is supportable under MDM solution. As part of MAM, it's very limited solution. It can control only the application which is installed on the bring your own device, personal device which is being used by the user. So the first point is it manages devices completely and manages only application MAM, and it requires enrollment. Enrollment is not needed. So in some situation like some manager doesn't want to configure their devices into Intune for administration work. So those kind of VIP users you can exempt from this solution. And what kind of device configuration you can perform from MDM is it's a very granular level like jailbreaking. Jailbreaking is something like if your device is you will not be able to access the corporate data. So that kind of restriction you can perform, and you can do a camera restriction in your mobile device, email access only on authorized app, like only Outlook app should open your mailbox. Any other application like native email or any third party email application, or if you're having any customized solution, those mail configuration will be blocked completely from. Under mobile application management, you have an option of controlling the cut copy paste. Like if you have a managed app, so those managed apps should be configured under MAM policy. Once you configure that, if a user is trying to cut or copy any data from that particular application, will be denied copying it to unmanaged app. So those kind of restriction, the flow between in and out can be controlled in MAM solution. And apart, the other option is app configuration policy. Specific to Outlook, when you open an option, there are multiple add-on, multiple settings are available. So those settings can be applied from Intune console as part of mobile application management. So those kind of control you can do it, but from the device level you cannot restrict any other device feature as part of MAM solution. What are all the methods available under mobile device management are a standalone method. You can straight away get the Intune license if you don't have any device management infrastructure. You can get a Azure subscription directly, and you can log on to endpoint.microsoft.com to access the Intune. From there, you can configure the devices and you can enroll number of mobile devices and apply the policy. That's a standalone method. The co-management with SCCM is something like it's a big infrastructure. We need to connect an on-premises infrastructure to the cloud infrastructure. So in between that, to connect both the solution in a proper authenticated way, we need a cloud management gateway. That is a different concept that authenticates with Azure Cloud Management Gateway, and it sends the policy to the internet facing client. And hybrid setup is something like it's a different setup. AD on premises is connected to Azure AD via Azure Connect. That is Azure AD Connect. That is a different concept. If you have that kind of setup, you can do a co-management with SCCM plus Intune. So that's possible. So once you have this hybrid and CMG solution already available, so you can design the workload and decide on what workload you can transfer from SCCM to Intune. Basically, what happens is there is an ongoing strategy from Microsoft that they are planning to move all the workloads, whichever that is managed in the on-premises environment, to the cloud solution. So as part of that, this Intune is one of the strategy in moving the workload from on-premises to a cloud environment. So under co-management, you can design the workload, whether, for example, SCCM can manage software update, it can manage software deployment, it can apply a compliance policy. So you can deny the compliance policy from SCCM, and you can transfer that particular policy to be applied from Intune. So it's a co-managed. And also in future, if you wanted to move on all the on-premises devices to cloud solution, you just disable the software update and move the software update to Intune. So that is the workload. Under Office 365 management, it is something like it is an available solution. You don't require a Intune, you don't require a co-management, but it's a very limited restriction you can perform from Office 365 management. and it's a inbuilt solution. From there, you can do a wipe, retire, or delete a device. But applying the policy is not possible. It's very limited under Office 365. So these are the three deployment methods. You can have a strategy in your environment. Before doing this, have a pilot group deployment, and after that, deploy it to the production environment. So this is the high-level architecture of MDM Intune solution. The left side, it shows a configuration manager with Intune with an hybrid solution, provided it should be an Azure AD connected environment, or it has a cloud management gateway environment. So that is, if that infrastructure is available, you can do a co-management with configuration manager. And Intune can be a standalone, in which Intune, once you have a proper license subscription, you can log on to endpoint.microsoft.com, and it gets connected to Azure Microsoft Intune, and from there the enrollment happens to the device and to the Windows 10 workstations. The next main topic in Microsoft Endpoint Manager, while implementing Intune or any other solution, planning is very, very important. For any big rollout of any device management solution, you need to collect all the current infrastructure. You need to have a device count, you need to have a server count. What are all the existing policy? What is the group policies applied? And how many bring your own device, personal device, and how many custom apps, how many LOB line of business apps, what is the mobile activity, what are all the projects going on. So based on that, you will have a planning session arranged for Intune solution implementation. The first thing is you start rollout to a pilot users, small group of users. For example, you can deploy this solution to a sales department, marketing department, or any other IT department. Get the feedback from the user and then slowly do a phased deployment. And a very important thing is a communication plan should be there before implementing MDM project. And in case if there is any other conflicting project happening, make sure that there is a risk analyzed before implementing this in Intune device management solution. Always have a end user experience with a training video, because once you deploy the solution, the user has to know how to enroll their device and what are all the changes and what kind of admin activity will happen. And also we will intimate those users that if the device is lost or if it is stolen by someone, please report immediately to the IT department, in which IT department have an access to Intune, and they can do a delete, wipe, retire, or they can have a notification sent to the device stating, giving the complete information about the helpdesk contact number. So those things can be planned, and this can be accumulated in a training video. You can give it to the user. And also, please consider this below points before implementing the Intune solution. One is user information in the cloud. So, what are all the user transferred from AD on premises through AD Connect and to the Azure AD environment? So, you need to have collected information, and where is your email environment? Is it in the on premises? So if it is on premises, you need to use the exchange access restriction from Intune. So what happens is only the enrolled user can be able to access the exchange mailbox environment, which is in the on premises side. Okay, and if it is in cloud side, it's very straightforward. All the public apps are controlled from the Intune level, so there is no restriction. You can apply a conditional access, you can apply a device compliance policy, you can apply a device configuration policy. Everything can be applied if it is in the cloud, Office 365 mailbox cloud. And you need to decide on device platform, whether it's a Windows platform, or is it a iOS platform, or it's an Android platform. Which platform you want to allow inside your corporate environment. In some organization, they deny Android or Windows device because it's quite less, not very less, it's eye vulnerable. But if you talk about iOS, you have multiple updates that is coming in, and it's quite secure when compared to other two platforms. So they allow only iOS device inside your environment. So those kind of platform restriction you can perform under Intune, and you can finalize the compliance and configuration policy. Make sure that it's not going to conflict with your group policy or SCCM environment or any other third-party application if you are using, and if you are applying any policy. Make sure that you collect all this information and you compare that solution with your Intune policy so that there will be no conflict at all. The next point is apply for a pilot users. As I said before, you can select some users from sales, marketing, or HR department. You can apply this particular policy on the user device and get the feedback. First, work on feedback, analyze, fix it, get the feedback from your management level, and apply and roll out without any problem. The next consideration that should you perform as part of planning and execution is you need to verify how many Windows operating system is being built in your environment first. Okay, if it is very frequent, every week there are new users coming in, and IT department has to go. They're getting a request call to build a PC. So if that is the case, you can give a solution to your management that there is an option of Windows autopiloting in which OS will be deployed automatically to the user devices. What happens is, in a normal scenario, you will purchase a PC, a device like a Dell, HP, or any computer from your vendor. That vendor will give it to your IT department. IT department will build those PC and give it to user with all the application, operating system, everything. So in autopiloting situation, there are three categories. In this one category, which is an IT department, is completely eradicated. So only the vendor and the user. From Intune, vendor will provide you the serial number of the PC that we have purchased. As an administrator, you have to import that as part of Windows Autopilot and do some pre-configuration in deploying the Windows operating system. Once you perform that, the user there will be a device delivered to the user, and user will log on to that device, and once they log on, complete OOBE experience of Windows operating system deployment will happen automatically. During that automatic deployment, the complete enrollment, complete policies, complete configuration of devices will be applied from the Intune. That is the concept of Windows Auto Connect. We will look at that in detail in the coming session. The next point is consider the AD Federation service and web application proxy server for a single sign-on authentication. If it is there, okay, there is no need of performing any SSO authentication from AD Connect to Intune. ADFS and web server will take care of that. If ADFS and web server is not available while configuring a AD Connect, you can enable the SSO authentication and it will get connected with Intune. Whichever the application, the public apps that you deploy from Intune to the user level will have a single sign-on authentication. Single sign-on authentication is nothing but it reduces the number of password invoke that you perform to access the public apps. So that will be cached under the public apps cache memory. Whichever the public apps you log on, there is no requirement of giving the password every time. So that reduction in number of password invoking is SSO authentication. The next point we need to consider is the custom domain name, or you want to go with the standalone dot on Microsoft.com. So that is very, very important. The next point is we need to consider the license, whether we need a license to be purchased to configure all the device or there is an existing license. And while deploying any policy like conditional access or Windows automatic enrollment, those kind of service requires a Azure premium license. And we will talk about the license in the next slide. Before license agreement, we will understand what are all the requirement that we needed from the customer level to implement this Intune solution. One is the license information. We need to verify whether it is there or not, and the domain controller, whether they have any UPN, how many UPN value they got, like Contessa.com or us.contessa.com, how many UPN value they got, or they wanted to use a custom domain. They need to create a custom domain name, and they have to integrate that custom domain with the internet facing Intune enrollment. Does your current UPN is a public routable email IDs? Most of the environment, they will not allow any public routable email IDs from the AD. So we need to create a separate UPN value, and you have to do a public routing from AD on premises through Exchange, and from there towards the cloud solutions. That is part of AD implementation and as part of Exchange implementation. And also, we need to consider something like public DNS, like the GoDaddy or any other Betelco or those many public DNS providers are there. Whether your DNS value is maintained by a different vendor or it's maintained internally. If it is maintained internally, you can directly log on to that. You can do all the entry for the custom domain authentication. And if there is any current projects, if there is any conflict, or if there is AD Connect setup needed for this, or already AD Connect is there, and if there is any hybrid solution being enabled from the AD Connect, those information you have to consider. And very important, network architecture to understand what is the firewall facing the internet. So if that should allow the internet facing client to authenticate with the on-premises solution. Okay, it is always very important to open all the ports required for this Intune enrollment. The next thing is number of users. Number of users is very important. Only then you will analyze and provide a planning solution to your management. Like whether one user have a 5 device needs to be configured, or you have to configure a 15 device. So those kind of information come under a number of users. You need to analyze and design accordingly. A number of corporate and personal mobile device, the asset calculation, how many corporate device being purchased or to be purchased in the coming year. So you need to have a proper roadmap of the device asset that is going to be managed using Intune. The next point is we need to consider the line of business application. What are all the custom application applied in the organization, and you need to configure this application, whether it's a downloadable or it's a exe file. You have to deploy it from the Intune to the mobile user. So those collections you have to perform, and you have to consider what are all the application to be deployed, like Outlook, Word, Excel, any LOB application or built-in application or custom application. If you want to deploy, you need to have a proper planning on that. And mobile device platform, which you need to allow, as I said, iOS is quite secure compared to other platforms. So those kind of planning should be considered before allowing any platform inside. And number of compliance policy comparing with the group policy or any other third party solution if you already have. And device configuration policy, if you want to change any policy or apply any policy for email. If you take email, uh, all the user will not have the information about what is the exchange server, what is my mailbox ID. So those very granular information will not be available under with the users. For that, we use a device configuration policy. Any other policy like conditional access for restricting only the Outlook to be accessed by the users, or they can be allowed to access any third party email solutions. So those kind of restriction should be performed, and those kind of information to be collected. And very important, you have a SCCM setup. And what is the strategy going forward? Whether you want to maintain the workstation separately in Intune and you want to manage the server, or you want to slowly move the workstation and all the workloads that you apply on the workstation from to the Intune, or whichever the strategy you choose, you need to be more clear while planning. And you have to see whether it's a co-manager, you have to apply the co-management or not. And also some you need to collect some of the exempted VIP users, and you have to apply the MAM policy to them, like cut, copy, paste, or any other changes from the app configuration level, what kind of application that you can deploy it to the non-enroll users. Those kind of gathering you have to get it from the customer or from the management, and you have to design in a eye level. The next thing we need to understand is Intune licensing, whether you have a license already available in your environment or not. Okay, and you have to give this information to your management to verify from your customer that whether they have a proper valid subscription currently available in your environment or not. So once you have a proper subscription, you are good to go to apply this Intune enrollment solution in your environment. First, you apply it in the pilot group, and after that, you roll out in the production environment after a proper feedback that you get from a different department. So that's it about the introduction of Microsoft Endpoint Manager and Microsoft Endpoint Manager Intune. So from this tutorial, what we learned is what is Microsoft Endpoint Manager. So it's a compounding solution of Intune mobile device management as well as SCCM on-premises infrastructure management, and it can perform a autopiloting deployment and desktop analytics for analyzing the current legacy desktop computers. And Intune can provide two solutions. One is mobile device management and mobile application management service. And the device can be managed using a standalone method or co-management method or Office 365 coexistence method. So you can have any solution applied without conflicting the workload. So workload is something like the policy that you have applied in your organization that should not get conflict with any of this. Next point we saw is planning and execution. It's very, very important during requirement gathering. After requirement gathering, you need to have a proper plan execution, and a license is required to make sure that you have a proper license count. And while enrolling your user, you have to decide whether the user can enroll only one device or they can enroll up to 15 devices. So those kind of execution plan should be performed before enrolling or implementing the Intune solution in your organization. So that's it about this tutorial. And in the next session, we will be talking about the different options available under Microsoft Endpoint Manager. And we will see each and every tabs that is available. So to get to know, it's a kind of walkthrough so that you will get to understand each and every service available under Microsoft Endpoint Manager. So thanks a lot for patiently watching this tutorial. Let's meet up in the next tutorial. See you. Bye.